Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV network. Some time ago, we changed the name of this BVTV leadership channel to become Today's Leader, in line with my firm thinking that out of the pandemic has emerged the need for new leadership skills and awareness. My guest today seems to be in accordance with that thinking. In fact, he's gone beyond that thinking and written a book that is both thought-provoking and action-oriented. The book is called, and you can see me holding it up to the screen now, and it's on the screen behind me, is called Leaders Out of Lockdown, the 7 Traits of Leaders Who Are Fit for the Challenges of the Future. So let's say hello to author and chair of the Black Isle Group. Welcome, Athol Duncan.
Hello there, Malcolm.
Yeah, and
great
listen,
to be with you.
This is quite interesting because normally I'm having to, go to Zoom off to and get to America and get a jet lag coming back and that sort of thing. But we're not far apart today, are we?
We're not far apart. I'm normally working out of London and doing quite a lot internationally and traveling around like a crazy person, like many people were before this lockdown. But now I'm just, 100 miles up the road from you in a place called North Berwick, which is on the coast in the south east of Scotland. So yeah, we're just a short train ride away.
Yeah, I know it's a beautiful place and ideal for a holiday as well, isn't it?
It is, and I feel a little bit guilty because it's been quite a nice place to be locked down in, while a lot of other people have not been so fortunate.
Yes, yeah, I understand that without a doubt. I'll be chatting to Athol in 3 parts: why, be, and act. First, I'll ask him why he thinks today and tomorrow's leaders will need to change or alter. In part 2, I'll ask him who he thinks these leaders will become, their culture, psyche, makeup. And in part 3, the act, I want to ask him how today and tomorrow's leaders will put this into action. But first off, let's tell us briefly who Arthur Duncan is and some key highlights on your fascinating journey to where you are today with this book.
Well, yeah, who is Athol Duncan? My kind of professional career, Malcolm, has been, I suppose, in 3 acts. First act, I was a journalist and executive at the BBC for 20 years, covering many of the world's big stories. And then in my second act, I was, I suppose, what we quite grandly called a transformation leader these days. And I was working in a number of different sectors, in utilities, in media, and in professional services, leading change in large organizations. And then my third act, where I am now, hopefully not my last act, is as a non-executive director, so sitting on a number of advisory boards, and also as an executive coach, working with many chief executives and senior leaders to help them change their behaviors, transform their businesses, and hopefully deliver far better results.
I find that really, really fascinating, your journey, because, before we started the interview, we talked back about to the time when you were covering that story in Lockerbie, which we discussed is 33 years ago there. Do you think your investigative, that's the word, isn't it? Investigative ability as a journalist has really helped you in your coaching with leaders, probing them, getting the story out and so on?
I think it certainly kind of done no harm, but I suppose the constant thread through all my life has been storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling when I was at the BBC, storytelling when I was a transformation leader to get people to buy in, to create the new vision for organizations, and storytelling now with the leaders in lockdown, because this time in March 2020, when the lockdown hit the UK, all the businesses that I was involved in were in some degree of crisis or jeopardy. And it was a pretty stressful moment. And I was walking along the beach just outside our home here. And I decided that I had to go back to my old journalistic skills, and I had to capture this moment in history, what could be the defining moment of this century, and only time will tell on that. But it's certainly a moment which I believe will have changed business and will have changed society in a considerable way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Atholl, let's get started on the why of part one. With my own work and the 500 plus interviews I've done in the past year, I'm convinced that today's leader needs change to be effective. However, many I've talked to think things will simply revert back to the so-called normal. What's your thoughts here? And why do you think new leadership will be needed?
Well, I hope things don't return to normal or return to where they were before the crisis, because I think one thing that COVID has taught us is that the way we were leading, the way we were running our businesses and the way we were running society needs to change to be fit for the future. I think you haven't seen any new trends emerge from this, but what you've seen is a rapid acceleration of trends that were already there. And one of those trends in leadership is the death of command and control, or as one of my leaders in lockdown said, the end of the Superman leader. And she did mean the Superman leader. And you see that during the crisis, the more effective leadership was the more compassionate, empathetic, listening, empowering leader. And I think that trend has accelerated massively. And going forward, one of the things that we're doing working with a lot of our clients is say, what do you want to hold on to from leadership in the crisis? And what do you want to give up? And what do we want to hold on to? What do they want to hold on to? Well, people talk a lot about the agility and the pace that was achieved at the peak of the crisis. So we want to hold on to that, number one. People talk about the focus that they brought to dealing with the most important things that would make sure that their businesses survived, not just being busy fools. So focus is the second thing. People talk a lot about how businesses came together, the silos were broken down, so there was cooperation. So we want to hold on to that. Indeed, there was care and compassion in a way that we hadn't always seen before. And there was trust. Where businesses worked well, where teams worked well, there was a very strong bond of trust in a very difficult and stressful and anxious time for everyone. So we want to hold on to these things. And we want to drop so much of command and control and so much of the old style of leadership.
And as you quite rightly pointed out, that move to compassionate or conscious agenda as well has been phenomenally fast, hasn't it?
It has been fast. I think it was there before. I think it was there in many businesses before, but it certainly was not universal, and it varied a lot from sector to sector and from business to business. But one of my leaders in lockdown was a woman called Marion Salzman, who had been a big advertising executive in New York, and now is leading at Philip Morris International, one of the world's largest cigarette companies, and she's leading it to what she calls a smoke-free future. Right. And her line that she repeated to me often was, it's time to put humanity back into leadership. And I think that's what this has proven for a lot of people.
And I think that's part of the excitement that we are looking forward to into this altered world. Before we move to part two, I'd like to remind viewers and listeners of your URL, which is on the screen behind me, obviously viewers, but can I just ask you to viewers to add a little bit to it, and listeners, I'll spell it out so you can get it written down. It's Black Isle Group, blackilegroup.com/lockdown, blackilegroup.com/lockdown. And I want to give you a bonus URL to go along. And it's a dead simple one, because it's AtholDuncan.com. And you just take this name down that's on the screen there and add a .com. Okay. And the book is called, and I really enjoy it. I mean, really, really enjoying this book because it's one there where I don't have to dedicate it constantly. I can dip in and out and then reflect upon the learning from each chapter. Leaders in Lockdown, Inside Stories of COVID-19 and the New World of Business. It's published by Lid Publishing Limited. And I especially like the way that Athol uses the letters of leading to spell out a course of action. We'll get back to that in a minute or so. Right, time for part two. What do you think leaders will become? I, for instance, tell them to become a blend of conscious or compassionate leadership, visible leadership, agile leadership, along with skills that help them become masters at hybrid, pre-adaptive and entrepreneurial. That may sound far, far too much, but those are just some of the things that I've identified across all the many interviews done where change is happening. Now, to many, that is overwhelming, but change has happened and is happening. So what's your thoughts on the B of become?
Well, what should leaders become? I mean, there are a number of themes I think you can pick up from the crisis. I think certainly with the leaders that we were working with, many of them realized the power of being able to pause and take a breath and to work either with a mentor or an executive coach or with a colleague to just take that pause and to have someone who was able to hold a mirror up to your leadership and be, if you like, a critical friend.
Yeah.
Challenge you about the decisions that you were taking, about the way that you were behaving, perhaps, and just make you stop, pause, and think. Mm-hmm. And I think there's been great power in that under the stress and the always-on nature of the crisis. I mean, who would imagine corporate crisis normally lasts for days? If you're very unlucky, they last for weeks. They don't last for 18 months. And we ain't out of it yet. So I think that ability to be able to pause and reflect has been very important. Mm-hmm. I think also we've seen the issues of mental welfare and physical welfare really come up on the tracks for many people. One of the leaders in lockdown that we worked with was Will Ahmed of a business called Whoop, WHOOP. And it's this wearable technology. I've actually got one on my arm. And that monitors your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your recovery, and your sleep 24 hours a day, 7 hours a day, so 7 days a week. And Will's theory is that as business leaders, we should adopt much more the mindset of the Olympian. And he doesn't mean that we should be lifting weights and running up and down hills, you'll be pleased to know, but that we need to look after our physical and our mental welfare so that we can make the best decisions possible for our organizations, and we are in the right condition to make those decisions. And if we have major events coming up in our business lives, that we're fully physically and mentally prepared for those. And that's not something that we've done in the past under the Wall Street or City of London mentality of work till you drop.
Yeah.
You know,
in some cases, drink to your drop as well.
Or drink to the abuse of alcohol.
Yeah.
So I think, but you know, getting back to the big stuff here, Malcolm, I think there's an emergence of a new style of leadership. There is an acceleration of so many trends. I think in many respects of consumer behavior and business strategy, we've moved on 10 years in 10 months. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And business will never become slower. You know, the pace of change will continue round about the level, if not faster than it is now. And for that, you need to be able to look after your mental and physical welfare. You need to be able to deliver at pace and agility. And you can only deliver through an empowered workforce. and you will only inspire through a more compassionate and purpose-led style of leadership. So there's so much in there to unpack. And, you know, your question originally was, will we go back to where we were before? And, you know, having lived through 9/11, where people said that we wouldn't work in skyscraper office blocks anymore, and we wouldn't go back to flying as much on airplanes, and to go back to the global financial crisis when people said that was the end of capitalism and the end of globalization. Of course, none of these things happened. It must be different this time. It must be different this time, because this pandemic has touched every person in the human race.
Yes.
And if you look at what is going on, you know, as we maybe come out of it in better shape in the US and in the UK, look at what's going on today in India.
Yes, that is frightening, isn't it?
It is frightening, and the pandemic has a long way to run.
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about the new world of work. We don't know what the new world of work is yet. We've been in this moment of lockdown, but we still have to come out of that to the hybrid world that so many people are talking about. And we have to work our way through this. And the other thing I would say, Malcolm, is that there will be a heck of a toll on business people because of what we have been through. And I think it is no exaggeration to say that you're going to see a tsunami of post-traumatic stress in the way that we would normally associate with a major war. And we've still to face up to that, I think, in the global business community.
I totally agree with in that one. Thanks, Athol. Now, for part 3, the action part. Now, as I said to you at the beginning, I'm really enjoying this book because just exactly what you've said beforehand, you know, pause and reflect. The way I like how you've written it is, you know, with these interviews that you've done, and then afterwards pause and reflect. I'm actually learning a lot with that approach there. But let's get on to the memorable way that you've laid out the structure with the leading model. Can you take us through what you see as the key actions within the leading model?
Well, I've been using the leading model in my executive coaching, and it's a good framework for keeping you on track, and certainly for beginning the conversations of change with senior leaders. And the acronym leading, if I run through it, the L is for looking like a leader, and that's, you know, a little bit of it is physically what you look like, but it's really about the mindset. What do you think, feel, and do as a leader? And does that look like someone who is a great leader in your sector or a great leader of your business? So the L is for looking like a leader. The E is for empathy, empowerment, and emotional intelligence. The A is for awareness, and particularly self-awareness. And clearly we believe as executive coaches that change only begins when we start that process of self-awareness. The D in leading is for delivery. You've got to get things done, and you've got to get big things done. The I is for impact, which is very much a communications thing. You know, are you inspiring and memorable? Do you communicate with clarity, brevity, and impact? The N is for nurturing. You know, how do you bring on those people round about you? And the G is for game changing. And that is the leading model. And I work with senior executives about where do they see themselves against these 7 traits, and where would they like to be? And then we work on how we bridge the gap.
So the real benefit is when you buy this book, you'll be able to get not only these brilliant interviews, the ones that I'm enjoying, but also interesting. You'll get introduced to the leading model. My guest today has used both his expertise in leadership and journalism to get to the heart of what we see here at today's BVTV Leaders channel as vital for the success of business in this new and altered business world. His book is both an enjoyable read and, with his extensive interviewing of leaders, a realistic and applicable action manual. Thank you,
It's a pleasure, Malcolm. Thank you very much for having me on.